Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Shilpi Mahajan, and I'll be moderating tonight's conversation. But before I start, I would like to tell you that this conversation was brought to you by East Brunswick Public Library in collaboration with the Indian Cultural Society of East Brunswick, the North Brunswick Free Library, and AAPI. Now, as someone who's deeply interested in storytelling, emotional landscapes, when I read this book, I was truly moved by the way our author understands ourselves and one another. And Men Like Ours literally resonated with me as one of those books. So, thank you for being here tonight for this special conversation around the book. Now, stories that tell us about relationships, they usually tell us what people say to each other. But Bindu's book is, is like those compelling stories that tell us what is unsaid, the silences, the inheritances, the expectations, and the emotional histories that we carry with to our families, to our children, and like a part of our identity, especially as South Asians. So, welcome to this conversation, Bindu.
Thank you.
A little about Bindu. Bindu is a senior writer at New York magazine's The Cut, and her work has appeared in the New York Times, the Paris Review, Electric Literature, and more. Her 2025 New York Magazine article, The Nanny Squatter, is currently being adapted into an Apple TV series starring Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Cecily Strong. She grew up here in Central Jersey, so she is from the area and now lives in Jersey City. Tonight is exciting because Men Like Ours is her first novel. Amazing, right? We should just clap for her. And the kind of emotional intelligence and nuanced exploration of the relationships, identity, and emotional inheritance, it's absolutely mind-blowing. So we'll begin the evening with a 10-minute reading from the novel. And after that, we'll have the questions with Bindu, followed with the question and answers with the audience. So over to you.
Thank you, Shilpi, and thank you guys all for coming into the East Brunswick Public Library. I'm going to read from a section of the book called Death by QVC. 5 months into her new life in Queens, Anita had lost 13 pounds. Her long hair broke when she brushed it with Ashok's fine-tooth comb. She took the scissors he used to trim his nose hairs and hacked it to shoulder length. Her bobbed reflection stared at her in the mirror, haggard and gaunt. At dinner, Anita watched Ashok chew lentils and rice with his mouth open. Her portion congealed in the center of her plate. Red pickle oil bled into the rice. Anita, please eat. I had a life before you, you know. I was the top of my class. Men appreciated me. Handsome men. Okay, so you've said. Women too. Okay, what happened to your hair? I'm depressed. Don't you notice how small I've become? Ashok glanced at her untouched food. Yes, you've been wasting food. So frugal you are. Lentils again. Real men spend. Ashok blew his nose into his dinner napkin. Kill me off, he suggested. What else do you want? I want to work. I want to hang myself. Then work. I've never said not to. I'll help you do the paperwork. You mail-ordered a younger girl. You say it wasn't your choice, but you didn't say no. Lucky man you are, but you don't appreciate. Emboldened by his silence, Anita pressed on, happy to set the hat of her rage on a man as gentle as Ashok, who carried it inanimately as an actual coat rack. I cried when my mother said I'd marry you. At least you'd have a house, she said. I thought a middle-aged man would be established. I come here, and it's smaller than the place I left. She yanked at the Mangalsutra fastened around her neck. I'm suffocating. This country is death by QVC. I didn't bring you to suffocate. I didn't bring you at all. You came on your own. It was your choice. I said no. My choice isn't mine. Listen to yourself. Are you not an adult? You speak like a victim, but what is my crime? Heartless man you are. Ashok studied his plate. His chair squeaked on the linoleum floor. Anita felt his fingers, tacky from the rice, on the nape of her neck. For one thrilling second, Anita thought he'd choke her, the veneer of the gentleman cracked, and waited for the vertiginous dark. Instead, he hooked a finger under her chain and tugged. Gold and black beads splattered across the floor. As quickly as Ashok made the mess, he swept it away. He gathered the beads in a drawer and set his dish in the sink, then ate the leftovers from Anita's. He washed both plates. "Leave when you'd like," he said. "You'll get your papers, start somewhere new. Isn't that what your mother calls and tells you to do?" Before the arrangement, Ashok had loved the woman in the apartment below, the divorcee with the Mario Kart sons, who walked with Anita on frigid afternoons and kept an eye on her sadness. He'd wanted to marry her, but the divorcee wasn't part of his community, and his family disapproved. They accused her of being opportunistic and cruel, conning a single, unfettered man into raising a deadbeat's mess. They promised to find Ashok a young bride instead. He told them, can you imagine, that he didn't care what she looked like, the divorcee told Anita on one of their walks. "He didn't tell you?" "No," Anita said. By then she'd come to look forward to the outings. The divorcee made a meager salary as a court stenographer, but she was a spendthrift and stopped to buy snacks off the street. Pillowy bao buns with curried mustard greens inside, egg yolk custards. That afternoon, she'd bought Anita a soft vanilla ice cream cone enrobed in a hard shell. Anita had refused. "You're wasting away," the divorcee told her. The women sat on a park bench. The red coating tasted of plastic. "I figured he'd told you," the divorcee said. "Old history, of course." The story nauseated Anita, though she didn't understand why. Anita thanked the woman for the ice cream and the history. She walked back to the building alone, up the narrow steps to the studio. She slid her suitcase, not entirely unpacked, out of the bedroom closet. Inside were her summer clothes, the few photographs developed from the wedding. Anita slid the top photo out. In it, she and Ashok, in his ivory turban and thick black eyeglasses, stood in profile, hands entwined. Anita's eyes were averted, her gaze fixed at a private spot of carpet, her dour expression at odds with the cartoonishly bright rouge on her cheekbones. Her uncle threw rice in the background. That night, Ashok reclined in his undershirt and flipped through a lab report. The TGIF lineup played on the television. "You never told me you were with that woman," Anita accused. "I went walking with her today," she confirmed. He turned a page. "Okay, what's the issue? Why be sentimental? You made it clear you have a history too." Anita rummaged for the pack of cigarettes and lighter she'd found in the suitcase, the gift her father had packed her, and lit one. Ashok pinched his nose. "I didn't know you smoked." "You know nothing about me." "Okay, you know nothing about me either. You never ask. Men are not very interesting." Maybe Ashok was right, and Anita had become sentimental. Ashok rented the studio, owned their shit furniture, had a bank account. Having nothing, she wanted to at least possess him. "Sorry, I'm your last resort." "This is not some island, Anita. People are not resorts. The city is an island. Look at a map." "Who told you to expect paradise?" He closed his lab report. "I'm going to bed," he announced. Anita watched an episode of Boy Meets World, then joined Ashok in bed. He turned to his side. He hated the smell of cigarettes. The women in his family didn't smoke, nor did the divorcee. The stench could be Anita's alone. He would be reminded of her, with revulsion, when he passed a smoker on the curb, or when she pressed against him, the way she did now, unbuttoning her nightgown, guiding his hands underneath. "Please," she murmured, almost like an apology. In spring, Anita got her work visa. She bought a Metro card with her weekly allowance, rode the subway to a library in Flushing, and applied for software engineering jobs on a chunky monitor. Application after application, she was turned down. The degree she'd worked tirelessly for didn't translate here. She could go to school again and redo it, an HR rep suggested, but that would take years and tuition to complete. She fell back into her depression and spent her allowances on cigarettes. "I'm getting a divorce," Anita declared, ironing a burn hole into one of Ashok's white shirts. "As soon as I get a job, I'm gone." Of course, Ashok sipped his coffee. Skillfully, he'd learned to drift away from Anita's rage. He cooked for himself at nights, and for the friends who visited him on weekends, as Anita smoked in the bathroom and played a Choli Ke Piche cassette on repeat. After the guests left, Ashok cleaned up and took his dinner on the corner of the kitchen floor, as he had done in his mother's house, where there were so many loved ones around and only so many spaces at the table. I should get you a damn banana leaf, Anita prodded. Eat, villager. You keep saying you're divorcing me, Ashok said. I'm learning to eat alone. Anita missed 2 periods. That she could be carrying didn't occur to her. How could she make another person when there was so little of herself left? Then the smells, undeniable. She couldn't brew coffee without covering her nose. The meat stench from the diner across the street, once tempting, now landed her in front of the toilet, combing bile out of her hair. One Monday morning, after Ashok left for work, Anita walked to a corner pharmacy, then a bodega. Back at the studio, she downed her chips and waited. 2 pink lines appeared on the test. Anita took a hand mirror from the medicine cabinet and retired to the bed. She sat with her knees apart and spread herself open before the mirror, as if this way she could see it herself, the horror of a child sticking. What horrified Anita delighted Ashok, who looked at his wife with elation. He insisted she eat her meals and bought her strawberry protein shakes for extra calories. He took out a mortgage on a house in New Jersey. He didn't want city children. Public schooling was a lottery system, skewed, as everything was, in favor of the rich. Now Anita could have her house, and Ashok could still ride to the city by train. New Jersey is dinky, Anita protested. The prospect sounded better than 2 people and an infant in one room, but she had no energy to uproot herself again. It's a good neighborhood, Willow Road, Ashok said. There's a good family next door, the Dikshits. I spoke to them. They have a daughter, a 3-year-old, who goes to the public school. It's blue ribbon, they said. That's false marketing. They lost that ribbon in the 70s. You live in that house alone with a good family, keep the child, take it grocery shopping. Ashok smiled. Anita's reactionary bitterness now amused him. The day of the first scan, he took off from work for the first time in Anita's memory. Before the appointment, he brought her to the diner for the lunch buffet. $13 no longer a problem. Ashok ate 3 bowls of kheer. Anita nibbled a tomato slice and a drumstick. The Sharmas boarded a crowded 7 train to the doctor's office in Manhattan. Anita had no visible bump, so no good Samaritan stood and offered her their seat. Ashok clutched the subway pole with one hand. With the other, he steadied Anita, who refused to touch the dirty steel. The subway doors hissed. A woman with a coif of white hair and a Ralph Lauren mink coat squeezed in behind Anita. A Pomeranian stuck its head out of the woman's leather handbag and panted, the tip of its pink tongue visible. Anita didn't notice herself reaching for the animal until the owner scolded her. You know, miss, you should really ask. The woman glared at Ashok. Sir, please tell your daughter to ask. And then one more section. Leila. 3 months after the Sharmas moved to Willow Road, Anita gave birth to a girl. She called her Leila, an easy name. We would have set up a puja, had her kick over rice when she came from the hospital, Karina Dikshit said, but we didn't know her. Not to mention she was rude, turned down in any invitation she got. Ruder than the white couple from before, Devika agreed. Your own kind is always the worst kind, no? House 24 grew unrecognizable after Anita gave birth. Weeds overtook the lot. The squash blossoms died, and the once pruned garden resembled thrush inside a sick child's mouth. Ashok planted his own seeds, wilting mint and anemic nightshades. Postpartum depression struck Anita with vigor. Birth thickened her nose and frame. Her hair grew matted from lack of care. So she cut it shorter, up to her ears. She emerged from the house once a day to stroll Leila around the block for her personal step count. The women spied her stretched mark skin hanging in pouches over her jeans. She sent them to me to add elastic, then took them back midway, told me she could do a better job herself, Jyoti said. Anita didn't send her mother her updated phone number or Willow Road address. Just before the move, Anita had called her to share the information. Since her pregnancy, she'd begun to pick up more Sunday calls. That time, her mother's fridge broke. Anita offered to send her a check to repair it. Don't take your husband's money, Anita's mother said. She broke into a fit of coughs worse than her standard ones. Your uncle will help. Don't take anything from that ogre. Are you sick? Yes, from wasting my lungs on you. Anita hung up, fuming. Somehow her mother found the Jersey landline anyway. The Sharmas received regular scratchy messages on the automated machine, punctuated by coughing fits. Sunday mornings, while Ashok tended to the prayer cabinet, Anita sat the baby on her lap. She lit up a cigarette, smoked, and played the messages back on the machine on speaker. Dear Anita, the messages began. That's your Aji, Anita told Leila, a witch. For 11 weeks, the messages collected. Though Anita wanted to check in on the cough, the mention of the uncle soured her. Congratulations on the child. Weather is awful. Dear Anita, still you have not forgiven me. You'll get lines in your face from the anger. Dear Anita, the neighbor ordered a pickle jar. Dear Anita, please forgive me. Dear Anita, don't be stubborn. Dear Anita, you think you are too good for that man, too smart and too pretty, but he's a good man. Dear Anita, today the neighbor brought a new dog. I thought of how you loved the old one. Dear Anita, think, would you be in America if not for me? Who would have married you here but a drunkard? Look at your father. Dear Anita, maybe yes, it's true what you told me, that even a loser can come to America. Dear Anita, the cough is not as bad as it sounds. Dear Anita, what are the baby's measurements? I'm sewing a frock. Dear Anita, dear Anita, dear Anita. The 12th Sunday, no new messages appeared. Anita played the old ones back. That night, the neighbor called to announce that Anita's mother had died of emphysema. Anita's feet numbed. Her body followed suit. Leila cooed in her arms. Ash from the cigarette Anita had been smoking fell on the baby's curls. Anita handed Leila to Ashok, went to bed, and spent the next 7 days there. I didn't hug her when I left, she cried to Ashok when he came with food or brought her the baby to feed. He found it awkward to comfort her. He reminded her to shower. Anita showered. Under the water, she thought of her mother's arms outstretched in the airport, the varicose veins on her skin. I didn't hug her, she cried to Ashok. I punished her.
That struck a chord somewhere with some of the people here. So, my first question to you is on the writing process. Like, while the parts of the book you read were pretty linear, the structure of the book is pretty non-linear, right? I mean, did you always map the plot out that way, or did the timeline shift during the writing process, like as you were writing the book?
Yeah, I think something that guided the structure of the book and the timeline is my love for spoilers. I'm an anxious viewer of TV shows, and I'll often pause something while I'm watching it so I can read a summary of what happens and be prepared, and then go back into it. And I find that like the stories that I still get a lot out of, even knowing what happens, those are the ones that I resonate with me the most because it's not what happens that's interesting, but why it happens and how it does. So I knew that a lot was kind of given up front in the beginning. Like there's a lot that you could kind of figure out about the murder mystery at the get-go. But then I was kind of interested in seeing how we peel back from there and arrive there again. And that's kind of how all the timelines and things took place.
So, I mean, while you were reading, I could see that there was a emotional weight in in the book, and yet there was some comedy, right? How did you balance the emotional depth and the weight of what you were writing and the comic part of it? How did you balance the two?
Yeah, I think, well, this book really started in some ways as a story about this like teenager in crisis who was being, abused and needed to get out of the situation. And I think when I started writing that story, I craved levity because it was so dark. And I think also in a story about, grooming requires this level of, to make somebody fearful of something or make somebody silent, you have to be telling them a fiction. And there's some level of absurdity in that. So I think that when I was writing, I just kind of looked for the moments where I myself craved humor or a little bit of levity, and that's how it kind of, this like tonal mishmash came.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and makes it easy for us to read the book because it's not like the topic is really dark, and yet there is enough comedy in the book. There's enough moments of, easiness in the book that, one can pull through. Now, I found Anita's character very fascinating because, as an immigrant woman, like you have to be, like especially South Asian women, they have to be likable to deserve empathy. I mean, and you see that across in that whole, neighborhood. So, so Anita is a complex character and very bitter, right? I mean, we saw that while you were reading about Anita, and can be tough to love. Um, how do you approach writing a female protagonist who's so deeply flawed and angry, and yet, somewhere in the end, you understand and you feel sympathetic
Yeah.
somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think I love stories about the deeply angry women and who are, free to be deeply flawed. So I definitely wanted to give her the free rein to do that. And I also think some of it was also a discovery of what is behind this
Hmm.
bitterness. And I spent a lot of time with her, like exploring different parts of her backstory and then, paring down, like what did the reader need to know about her to kind of understand the way she is now, the emotions that she suppresses, how they kind of come out as rage, and yet, still sympathize with her because she is so deserving of that.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting to go through the character, as I was reading the book. Now the context, it's set in this area, right? I mean, New Jersey, suburban, Willow Road sounds pretty much like Oak Tree Road, or maybe neighborhood of North Brunswick. So this physical landscape was intentional, like how does it shape the way the characters interacted with each other? The setting the book in New Jersey, especially, I felt it. And each person, once they read the book, is free to feel what they feel. But I felt like this was a very, South Asian dominated neighborhood. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think the women in the book kind of see themselves in this like social liminal space. And in some ways, I even think of, growing up in New Jersey, growing up in Central Jersey. Um, Sometimes people don't even think Central Jersey is a real region. It's like the liminal space between the North and South. And you can have all these like little pockets and enclaves and things like that. And I was also interested in the way that yeah, I mean, Oak Tree Road has a huge presence in the South Asian community, but now it's like really blossomed outwards into the Brunswicks and everything. So I was
Yeah.
kind of interested in those like peripheral spaces to it. Though this is its own little fictional play.
Yeah. So the next question I had was about, I mean, the character Matthew was found in like dead, murdered in a BMW. And I mean, again, I was really putting on my immigrant hat there. In immigrant cultures, a BMW is the sign of success. It's a sign of, um, we have arrived kind of a thing. So uh, is there is was it an intentional move to have the character in like in a BMW? Like is there an intention behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing I wanted to explore was even how like class plays out here. And
Hmm.
Matthew is like this friend to all the women in this neighborhood, but he actually lives, upstate in New York and is at a remove, considers himself more assimilated than anybody around him. And also part of that is like flaunting his wealth. So if he's wearing a label, I'll mention it, or he's in his BMW, and it's like a power that he carries, and the BMW announces that every time he rolls up into the block.
Um, the next question is about the good immigrant myth and like follows from Matthew's character again, right? So Matthew hides behind his respectability, his score, his being a helpful family friend. He knows all the women in the neighborhood. Um, and do you think this pressure of maintaining this successful, perfect immigrant, it kind of, especially in the diaspora, it allows men like Matthew hide their predatory behavior?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's not even, it's true of like men in any community who
Hmm.
have this veneer of respectability, but might not be so respectable behind that, might have wealth to cushion them. I think, for him, it's class is a major factor in like what is protecting him, but also in terms of, him befriending a fellow neighborhood of immigrants, you want to prop each other up in a way. Like you don't want to
Hmm.
yeah. So the fact that yeah, people want to like believe the best in each other sometimes, even though there's also characters who definitely don't believe the best
Yeah.
in each other here. kind of affords him this protection of like loyalty.
Mm-hmm. Um, so let's come to Anita's character, and you read about her, and she's obviously very lonely, and she's bitter, and she has this deep isolation after moving from India to New Jersey. So how much do you think the way the suburbs of America are, the cultural layout and the physical layout of the American suburb, it impacts the loneliness, like it impacts the isolation for first generation immigrant women, like especially, they coming from a very bustling place, and then they come and they're transposed here in a place where people really don't talk to each other. So do you think that kind of compounds the isolation?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the fact that even the loneliness of a suburb where you have to drive around to get anywhere, the kind of sameness of a suburb, the same neighborhood can repeat in so many places in this state, across the country. This kind of, I think that sameness really contributes to her isolation. And the fact that it's not really common to live near your family or with your extended
Mhm.
family. You're just kind of more single family, individual kind of setup. And I think that is not something that she's necessarily used to.
So, so I mean, we read about Anita, and we read about Leila, and they're both carrying the same wound, right? I mean, they both have their share of trauma, like Anita, the trauma of, moving here and being a first generation immigrant, married to a middle-aged man, not feeling love, and Leila, because she's being groomed by a man. But they both have different language to process their trauma. So how did you navigate this landscape, this mother-daughter dynamic where it's different, totally different way to, navigate their inner world?
Yeah, I think that they definitely, yeah, do have very different languages for it, and yet I kind of see them as like drawn from the same deck. So I know that there's ways that they're going to have common ground, and I think it was like fun to explore what is that exactly. I think that they kind of come to see, or so I hope that there's like merit to both of the ways that they're processing it. Anita's very much, she has this saying that she often teaches Leila throughout the book to just bury it and move on because that's how
Mhm.
she knows that's the only way she knows to move past it. And Leila kind of rejects this throughout, like why would I do that? Like what is the benefit of that? But then they kind of come to see each other's points of like hashing it all out and also, you know, the importance of forward momentum and
Yeah, you see that towards the end of the book where there is that forward momentum and a sort of a convergence.
mm.
Do you think it's generational, like this kind of different language, or is it to do with the fact that culturally they are a little different? Like one comes in as an immigrant and one is raised here, or it's across generation. Like older people have like a different way of processing the trauma, and the younger generation today has a different way.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I
Both.
mean, it's their generational divide, it's their cultural divide. Maybe like Layla has more room to be expressive about these things, and Anita had to kind of bury it and move on, and it comes out in other ways. But so I think it's a combination of the two.
Okay. Now we talk about gossip as currency. I have some South Asian women here. So, in immigrant cultures, and gossip pretty much functions like an unofficial social system, right? I mean, there's policing, there is protection, there's connection. So, do you view the anti-culture network in the diaspora as a harmful force that silences the victims, or can it be a way of protective solidarity? Or maybe, in any other culture where this, gossip culture is present, do you think it silences or it what's the word, empowers.
Yeah, yeah, I think it does some of both and across like yeah, everybody gossips and it does harm, but it also is informative. It's a kind of way to like people keep each other socially in check. It's like there's a religiosity to gossip and the power that it can have over people and their behavior. So I think that it depends like how responsibly you wield your gossip, and sometimes it's responsible, sometimes it's pure delicious fun, and yeah.
So, again, coming from the gossip, and because of that culture that we have, unfortunately, the community tends to protect its own at the cost of truth, right? I mean, you see that initially in the middle of the book when they wanted to protect Matthew, and they wouldn't believe that he's like kind of this perpetrator. Do you feel that this kind of community culture that um, we have created, how does it help with the personal trauma? How do people carry that always behind closed doors? Do you think it's like it kind of perpetuates that kind of um, silence and trauma, like, keeping your trauma to yourself?
In the sense that like what people think of you and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I mean, I think you might feel, and this is true of any like you're putting on this like public performance at times, and I think that that's definitely removed from who you are behind closed doors, and the self-interest that you have behind closed doors. So I think sometimes if there's like a real dissonance between how you want to be seen and then who you
Mhm.
are in private. Like in private is the only place to express all the extreme emotions that maybe elsewhere you're hiding, policing within
Mhm.
yourself. But then you go home and it all comes out.
Yeah. So, I mean, the next thing is the vocabulary again. First generation, again, I think I read this, sorry. So, how did you approach writing Anita's mental health arc when the character herself might not have words like depression, anxiety in their vocabulary? Like, how did you, was it how did you manifest it, like, because people can see she's deeply depressed, people can, while you're reading the book you can actually see that she's struggling, mentally, and yet there is no mention of, she doesn't know how to say it. She'll stop talking to her mom, she doesn't want to talk to her husband, she's not eating. So
Mhm.
how did you create that arc?
Yeah, yeah. I think I thought a lot about Anita feels this like deep lack of control over her own life and carries a lot of pain and resentment over that fact. And I thought about, well, what does she feel like she can control? Because those are the ways that maybe she will express herself. And then I think one of those ways is through body image. She's like always kind of policing her weight. When she's depressed, it goes down, and her hair and her appearance. So she's very comfortable kind of expressing herself in that external way, in a way that she like lacks language for in the more emotional interior sense. So that was one of the ways. And then I think, I was also playing with the fact that because she represses so much, she's also very I don't know, maybe like expressive with her anger. She kind of, I thought like this is a character in addition to the things that she can't control. She sometimes can't control her anger, her volatility. So I had, she's yeah, always exclaiming, I think.
So, so Leila has to reconcile. So Leila was being groomed by Uncle Matthew, and she had to reconcile her love for Uncle Matthew with the realization that he was actually abusing her. So, what, psychological toll does a betrayal? Because I mean, this is like a close relationship, but the psychological toll of that betrayal can take on a young person's mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's immense, and I think it comes out in ways that you might not know. It reverberates throughout your life. I think for Leila, it's also happening at this formative time where she's kind of exploring, growing up, being an adolescent, exploring her kind of burgeoning sexuality. At the same time, she is being kind of cultivated into this object for, the use of this older man. And I think that so she's trying to become a person while also being kind of made into an object. And these things really contribute to a lot of her journey in the story, how these two things brush up against each other.
So again, with Leila, like initially, even with Anita, there's this, we know that these women are undergoing trauma, and the silence around the trauma, and Leila has enough words to express it eventually, but I mean, the silence around trauma becomes secondary trauma itself. So, uh, what do you think when a community chooses to ignore red flags to maintain social harmony? What kind of psychological impact does that collective denial or gaslighting has on the victims trying to process the experiences, and not just on the victims, the ability of the community as a whole to process these kind of experiences, this mental health issue that may come up, like yeah. So
Yeah, I think in the case of the women in the book and like the different, trials that they face, I think if they feel like there's not room for them to deal with that in public, or it's somehow not appropriate or, uncouth or whatever it may be, it just becomes, they might even try to tell themselves that it's not happening. If you're told that, I think that you can often tell yourself that, so that like the effect of you kind of surveil yourself after being surveilled by others.
mm. That's a very interesting one, that you surveil yourself by, I mean, you see women in South Asian communities surveilling themselves more than, I mean, even more than they sort of surveil others. Now, but towards the end of the book, you see like this informal female solidarity, they all get together and, get together to get rid of the protagonist, like the one who was the perpetrator. So, do you see this solidarity as a legitimate path to mental health healing, or it's more of a survival mechanism that came from the lack of, culturally being able to talk about trauma, or or about mental health, or I mean, culturally there's not competent material in our communities to talk about these issues. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's kind of both. Like it's that kind of the help that it can offer people is born out of necessity, and it's like, well, if I'm not, gonna seek help otherwise, if I can turn to a neighbor or, turn to someone and kind of believe that we can care about each other, I think that is really healing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't know if there's another part that I missed, but um, yeah. Yeah. So I think it's both. And
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I was just, most of my questions came from a recent mental health conference that we had, especially for South Asian people. And, it was funny that there were women in their 50s who came and sought mental health, like in their 50. So it kind of resonated so deeply with me, because as women, like in the community, we tend to lean on each other. And yet, when you turn a certain age, you tend to realize, oh, I mean, things are empty and things are, I mean, it feels like your book touches that emotional reality with enormous compassion towards the women in the stories. So, my last question to you is, this is your debut novel, and debut novels often carry years of labor behind them. So, any advice that you have for our people here who might just have like an idea in mind, ready to bloom and put it into writing?
oh my gosh. Well, just see it through to the end. And if you have any little voices in your head that are telling you not to do that, just see it through to the end, you know, you never know. And yeah, just don't get too down on yourself, I would say, because it can be a really downer kind of process.
So I open the floor to all of you. Like, I mean, if you have any questions and answers, Melissa is going to be going around with.
Hi, my name is Swati. Thank you for the book. I was very excited when I was invited to come here. I do have to say I haven't read the full thing. I'm still on Friday. Um, Anita, I think, is just talking to Karina about childcare and all that. So I'm still there, but I got the gist of what was going on. My question is, it was such, at least in the first half of the book, it is such a predominantly female story. Why did we have to center the title on a man?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of the title, and I see it as the, oh, sorry. Do I wait for him?
No, you
Okay.
have the mic.
Okay, I have the mic. Hi Swati. Thank you for reading and thanks for coming. I kind of see the title as like the Trojan horse that actually brings in the women. You know, it's in some ways like maybe they have centered men in their lives, but really this is a story about them. So I kind of liked almost like it's like a little bit of a dupe in a way. So I was playing with that a little bit.
Mhm.
So speaking of the cover, I'm curious about how you got this final package for your book. What was that process like?
Yeah. Such a cool cover. So I really love the artist Maria Kumar, also known as more popularly by Hate Copy. She does a lot of like pop art with South Asian characters, and I've always loved her work. And I think that there's this a lot of her work is about like community surveillance. And so this is like, I think the artist called Peekaboo. And so I sent it to Bloomsbury as one of my, when it was time to conceive of the cover as one of the images that I liked and kind of, made me think of this neighborhood. And then our wonderful jacket designer, Sarah Wood, made this incredible version of it, and Maria Kumar licensed out the art. And yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah, it's an epitome of auntie culture. You can actually look at women looking through the window.
And they have
So,
really great nails.
yeah,
The
and
nails
they
are
have
done.
really great
Yeah.
nails. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Julie. My question is, obviously this story, as many women who have, come here as immigrants, including me. So when you were reading those stories, I could relate myself to many places out there, not exactly the anger part, but then yes, because most of the time you don't even know what you're feeling until many years later. Okay, so what inspired you to write this? Obviously, this is not your story, right? Because so somebody must have definitely inspired you, or you did a lot of survey talking to a lot of women, because this is something real, really real.
Yeah.
So yes, so that's my question.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that it resonated. And my parents are both immigrants, and a lot of, our social circle growing up was, and I just have had, I guess, yeah, a lot of observation time and things like that. But I just kind of really, this character of Anita, kind of understanding that I, as like a child of immigrants, can understand the loneliness that she carries and the life that she has lived. And understanding that, I just wanted to see, I just spent a lot of this time with this character, seeing how far I really wanted to understand her as much as I could, with also the understanding that there would always be a remove between us, the way that there is between Anita and Leila. So.
And then you would like to say any words you want to end your
Yeah, I mean,
Q&A with?
oh.
Otherwise.
Well, thank you, Shilpi, for this wonderful conversation. And thank you guys all so much for coming out and for supporting this book. It's a dark, weird, funny book, and I love New Jersey. That's why I moved back here and everything. So if you're reading it, thank you. If you haven't picked it up and you're going to read it, thank you. Just thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you to all of you, and especially to East Brunswick Public Library for, letting us have conversations like these. I personally want to end it with a note that this was real in many ways. Like, this was a story of every single immigrant community, and I'm sure a lot of South Asian women will resonate with it. So thank you so much for giving voice to our, emotions with compassion and reality. Yeah,
Thank you so
thank you so
much.
much.